This morning, you probably checked the weather on your phone. A quick glance, a number, a little cloud icon. You made a decision in 3 seconds and moved on with your life. But in June 1944, a weather forecast decided the fate of the entire world. And the man who made it had no satellites, no computers, and one chance to get it right. The real story of why D-Day worked is far stranger than the version you learned in school. It was not won by bravery alone, it was won by a fake army, a double agent with a wild imagination, a Scottish meteorologist nobody trusted, and one of the greatest lies ever told. Start with the problem. By 1944, Nazi Germany had turned the coast of France into a fortress. Hitler called it the Atlantic Wall. Thousands of bunkers, millions of mines, beaches wrapped in barbed wire and steel obstacles designed to tear open landing craft before they ever touched sand. The Germans knew an invasion was coming. Everyone knew. The question was never if, the question was where and when. That single question was the whole war. Because here is the strange truth about amphibious invasions. They are almost impossible. Throughout history, attacking a defended beach from the sea has been one of the worst ideas in warfare. The defender has concrete, the attacker has water. In 1942, the Allies tested a small raid on the French port of Dieppe. It was a catastrophe. More than half the attacking force was killed, wounded, or captured in a single morning. The lesson was brutal and simple. If the Germans knew where the landing was coming, the landing would fail. So the Allies did something remarkable. They decided not to hide the invasion. They decided to hide the truth about it. The plan was called Operation Fortitude, and it might be the most successful deception in military history. The historian Antony Beevor, who wrote one of the definitive accounts of D-Day, described the deception effort as every bit as important as the fighting itself. The idea was elegant. The Germans expected the invasion at the Pas de Calais, the narrowest point of the English Channel, just 20 miles from the British coast. It was the obvious choice, the logical choice, so the Allies let them keep believing it. They built an entire fake army to sell the lie. It was called the First United States Army Group, and it did not exist. Inflatable tanks made of rubber sat in English fields, positioned so German reconnaissance planes could photograph them. Plywood aircraft lined fake runways. Fake landing craft made of canvas and oil drums floated in harbours. Radio operators broadcast thousands of fake messages between units that were nothing but paperwork. And commanding this phantom force, on paper, was General George Patton, the one American general the Germans genuinely feared. If Patton was in charge, the Germans reasoned, this had to be the real invasion force, aimed straight at Calais. But rubber tanks alone could not fool an intelligence service. The lie needed a human voice, and this is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. His name was Juan Pujol Garcia, a Spanish chicken farmer who hated fascism so much that he decided, entirely on his own, to become a spy. He approached the British 3 times. They rejected him, so he did something insane. He approached the Germans instead, convinced them he was a loyal Nazi sympathiser, and began feeding them intelligence reports about Britain. There was just one problem: he had never been to Britain. He wrote his reports from Lisbon, using a tourist guidebook, a map, and pure imagination. He told the Germans that men in Glasgow would do anything for a litre of wine. He invented train schedules. He made up troop movements from thin air. And the Germans believed every word. When British intelligence finally realised what this one man was doing on his own, they brought him to London and gave him a code name, Garbo, because he was the greatest actor they had ever seen. Working with his handler, Garbo built a network of 27 sub-agents feeding information to Berlin. A pilot, a courier, a disgruntled soldier. None of them were real. Every single one was fiction. By 1944, Garbo was the most trusted German agent in Britain. The Germans were paying salaries to imaginary people. Think about that for a moment. Hitler's intelligence service was funding a novel, and on the 6th of June, that novel delivered its final chapter. In the days after the Normandy landings, Garbo sent Berlin his most important message. He told them Normandy was a trick, a diversion. The real invasion, he warned, was still coming at Calais, with Patton's mighty army. Hitler read the assessment built on Garbo's intelligence and made the single most catastrophic decision of the campaign. He held the 15th Army, hundreds of thousands of men, and powerful panzer divisions at Calais, waiting for an army that did not exist. For 7 weeks they waited, while the real invasion carved its way into France. The Germans later awarded Garbo the Iron Cross for his service. The British awarded him an MBE. He remains the only person in the Second World War decorated by both sides. But deception was only half the miracle. The other half fell on the shoulders of one exhausted Scotsman staring at weather charts. Group Captain James Stagg was the chief meteorologist for the invasion, and he faced a problem that would break most people. The landing needed a rare combination of conditions: a full moon for the airborne troops, a low tide at dawn so landing craft could see the beach obstacles, calm seas, clear skies. Only a few days in June offered the right moon and tide. The invasion was set for the 5th of June, and then, as tens of thousands of men were already boarding ships, Stagg looked at his data and saw disaster coming. A storm was rolling into the channel. Understand what he was risking. American forecasters, using a different method, said the weather would hold. Stagg disagreed. He walked into a room containing General Eisenhower and the entire Allied High Command and told them to stop the largest invasion in human history. Based on air pressure readings, Eisenhower postponed, and on the 5th of June, the storm hit exactly as Stagg predicted. Landing craft would have been swamped. Aircraft grounded, the invasion would have drowned before it began. Then Stagg saw something in the data that nobody else could see: a gap, a brief window of tolerable weather, roughly 36 hours long. Arriving on the 6th of June, he told Eisenhower the storm would break, just barely, just long enough. Eisenhower paced the room, weighed the fate of the free world against one man's forecast, and said the words that launched the invasion: "Okay, we'll go." Here is the counterintuitive twist. The bad weather did not just fail to stop D-Day, it actively saved it. The Germans had weather stations too, but they had lost their ships and outposts in the Atlantic, so they could not see the incoming break in the storm. Their forecasters looked at the gale and concluded no invasion was possible for days. German naval patrols were cancelled, senior officers left their posts for war games, and Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the man in charge of defending the entire coast, looked at the forecast and drove home to Germany to give his wife a pair of shoes for her birthday. When the first Allied paratroopers dropped into Normandy in the darkness, the one commander who might have organised an immediate counterattack was 500 miles away, asleep in his own bed. The historian Stephen Ambrose, who interviewed hundreds of D-Day veterans for his research, argued that this was the deeper reason the landing succeeded: not just deception and not just weather, but initiative. The German command system was rigid. Terrified of Hitler, paralysed without orders, the panzer divisions that could have thrown the invasion back into the sea could not move without Hitler's personal approval, and on the morning of the 6th of June, nobody dared wake him. The most powerful dictator on earth slept in, and his staff let him, while the largest armada ever assembled emptied onto the beaches of France. By the time the German tanks finally rolled, it was too late. Meanwhile, the Allied side ran on the opposite principle. Sergeants made decisions generals would normally make. When the plan collapsed on Omaha beach, and it did collapse completely, small groups of soldiers improvised their own way up the bluffs. The plan failed, the people did not. And behind them stood a machine of preparation that is almost impossible to comprehend. The Allies knew they could not capture a working port, so they built their own and towed it across the sea. 2 artificial harbours, codenamed Mulberry, made of giant concrete blocks and sunken ships, assembled off the beaches within days. They laid a fuel pipeline under the channel. They ran millions of tons of supplies onto open sand. The Germans assumed any invasion would need to seize a port to survive. The Allies simply refused to accept the assumption. This is why the operational historian Joseph Balkoski, who wrote the definitive beach-by-beach studies of Omaha and Utah, concluded that D-Day was won as much by logistics and engineering as by rifles. So why did D-Day actually work? Not because the plan was perfect, it was not. The bombers missed, the tanks sank, paratroopers landed miles from the targets. It worked because the Allies understood something deeper than tactics. They understood that every battle is fought twice, once on the ground and once inside the enemy's mind. They spent years shaping what Hitler believed, until the strongest army in Europe stood guard over an empty horizon, defending Calais from rubber tanks and imaginary spies, while the real war walked ashore somewhere else. There is a modern mirror here, and you live inside it. Every day your decisions are only as good as your information. You trust forecasts, you trust sources, you trust the picture of the world assembled inside your head. The Germans lost the most important day of the 20th century, not because they were weak, but because their picture of reality had been quietly, patiently, brilliantly replaced with a fake one. The lesson of D-Day is not just about courage on a beach, it is a warning. The most dangerous weapon ever aimed at anyone was not a gun or a bomb, it was a believable story. So tonight or tomorrow morning, you will glance at your phone and check the weather. A quick look, a 3-second decision. Remember that once, a single forecast like that held 80 years of your world in its hands, and the man who made it got it right.